So the first thing we have on the docket is to approve the October 2018 meeting, which was, we had quite a bit. I just kind of glanced through it. I didn't have anything to do.
I think we should do this about a forum.
Oh, we can't vote on it. No, obviously. Okay. Do you have any notes or anything on them?
No changes, right?
Okay, nothing. So no changes anyway. Okay, so we'll move on to communications from staff. Our favorite, quiet zones. Oh, and here, where's that be? Or somebody. Oh, Melanie.
Nice.
We now have a quorum.
We can go back.
Yeah, we can go back. So now we'll go back to approving the minutes of the preceding meeting, because now we have quorum. Neither of these gentlemen had any notes or questions for the last meeting.
The only one that I found here for not from you,
Yeah.
at the very beginning, it says someone abstained. That was actually me. From the approval of the last.
It says board member Parrott.
Yeah, exactly. It was
Okay.
me.
Okay. Oh, yes. So you can throw it.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other changes? Seeing none, are we okay with approving the minutes of the October 2018 meeting with the one change? So by saying aye. Aye.
Hi.
Anyone opposed? No. That's it. So it's passed. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to communications from staff, quiet zone update.
All right, so good news to share on this one for once. So we've got money in the budget for 2018 to spend on some public outreach. So we're spending approximately $50,000 with JUB and one of their subsidiaries, Langdon Group, to do a public outreach effort. And we're working through contracts as of today. So we'll be getting notice to proceed out here hopefully before the end of the week. Stay tuned. We anticipate we'll be having our first public open house early January, probably second week of January. And then second meeting in February, and final report late February, and I believe probably by March we would have presentation of the results of that effort here to this board. Subsequently, we're going to kick off design efforts in January to start designing all crossings. We've got 16 crossings to design, so we're going to kick off design efforts on those, with the goal being to get to a 60% design level so that we have cost estimates in hand ready to go, pending the public outreach on where that tells us to go to start prioritizing the build. So right now, timeline's laying out that we'll have that information available in time to meet, to get to council for budget season so that they can make decisions on where to go.
Cool.
Great job.
Public outreach is to help prioritize or to just let folks know?
That was the direction we received from council, was to select or solicit public input for prioritization on quiet zones. So where do we start? What makes the most sense?
Is there any, I think the answer is no, but is there anything that, is there anything besides prioritization that the public can offer their input on with regards to this? Like how the crossings are implemented, or is there any any additional options? Or
Sure. Some of the things that we will be asking and can ask, there are some options for the crossings. Closure being one of the potential options to create a quiet zone that would definitely have some impacts on neighborhoods. That would be one thing that's on the table. Wayside horns is another option that might be slightly cheaper, but still technically a quiet zone. So those would be the type of things that we'd be asking the public feedback
What was the
for.
last term you mentioned? The
Wayside horns.
wayside ones, okay.
So instead of the train blowing its horn, it's a fixed horn at the intersection.
It's a lot more focused, so it doesn't just blast out as the train moves. And the train can be quiet, but the horn blasts out at the cars approaching or the people approaching.
If you're standing next to it, it's still every bit as loud as a train.
is this outreach, is this localized to intersections near the tracks, or is this held somewhere?
Probably a little
To be determined yet where we're going to host the open houses, but I believe our goal is to focus on adjacent to the rail line with notice to the whole city via public media services that we have through either our Facebook page or Twitter page. We've got a new program outreach tool that we're trying to get up and running called Bang the Table. That's going to be something that people can provide feedback on. It'll be available on our website. You can go and hey, do this crossing, provide comment that way if you can't get to a public meeting. Just another way to provide that commentary.
Cool.
Great to see the progress.
Yeah.
Great. So TAB vacancies, which is what we were still discussing.
Sure. So, council officially removed Jackson Wood from the board, so he's no longer a member. That position was advertised. They're currently recruiting and interviewing this month to fill that position. Abigail's will be recruited in starting in January, I believe. So, hope to have some new board members coming up to speed here pretty quick.
So this position that I'm in was open in, I think, January. And so I applied in, I think, December. And it wasn't until June that I was interviewed. Is there a way that we can fill her role sooner?
I will ask that if we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so typically they're all done in June. But if we have things that open up, it depends. If they're slightly off cycle, they go sometimes right onto the cycle. Yeah, and so there isn't a lot of like off cycle ads. Just this board has gotten hit in the last year. Yeah, it must. So. Okay, do you want to add US 287?
Yeah, so I wasn't at the meeting, but staff was at a meeting with CDOT last week where CDOT rolled out an idea of devolution of US 287. More or less, they would rename the US 287 and change the route for the official routing, vacate the right-of-way to the cities and counties from Fort Collins to 119. The impetus for this is a reservoir project north of Fort Collins.
Where they're filling in all the space.
What's that?
Are they filling in a lot of that valley up there?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, right before Fort Collins.
Yeah. So like from Rawlins down.
And so at this point, we don't have a whole lot of information on it. It's kind of a new, we learned about it last week, so we've got to come up with some pros and cons. What are the impacts to Longmont for this? It appears that Loveland and Fort Collins have had a little bit more of a heads up on this. They've had a chance to prepare some cost estimates of their own for what the impacts of that would be.
So what you're seeing in front of you right now is the location where they do plan on, you can see the existing 287 running underneath that lake.
Yeah.
Reservoir, right? So
Right.
that's, you asked the question about that, and the idea is that CDOT, rather than spending the $90 million that it would take to come back across that hogback there and go just east of where that new reservoir is shown, because that's basically the hogback on the east side of that reservoir that's
Right.
containing it.
Yeah.
So they'd have to run the road over or through or around that hogback somehow and come back into Fort Collins. Well, so they're asking, instead of tying back into the existing 287, use that Owl Canyon Road on the north end. And that's a cutoff that people are already using. I mean, if you've ever come down from Laramie, some people will just cut off there and go right over to I-25 because it's a pretty straight shot to I-25 from there. And then you can kind of do your thing there. So CDOT is requesting that the designation be changed so the 287 would run over along Owl Canyon Road out to I-25, stay on I-25 all the way down to 119, and then come back into Longmont as 287 on 119. So they share that designation. These are all shared designations then. Share the designation until it got to Main Street back over here at 119 and 287, Main Street and Campground Boulevard. And then continue as 287 as it is today, south of the city. So basically anything north of 119 then would lose its designation as a U.S. highway. So it would lose the state funding piece of that. But the other piece of this is that we would get control. Or the city would have, all these cities and counties that this road runs through would then get control of their segment of the roadway, if that makes sense. So they would have ultimate say on intersection spacing, intersection control, access control.
Lane widths, a lot of design elements about the roadway. Currently CDOT, we have a maintenance agreement with them to maintain the signals on the state system, so that's something that clearly we wouldn't be getting anymore, along with maintaining pavement markings is something we do, but, so there's a pro and con analysis to do on is this better for the city or not.
And what is your thought so far?
It's mixed. we need to put together the pro-con list, because it's like, well, this would be great, but this would be bad. But this would be wonderful, but this would be terrible.
Did they say why 119? Like why they didn't decide 66 or somewhere else to come?
I think it's because 119 is a 4-lane facility, so they
Oh,
would
okay.
want to keep it. As 287 is a 4-lane facility all the way through its corridor,
Oh, okay.
basically from Fort Collins where it leaves the system, where they want to take it off the system. It's a 4-lane highway all the way through, so they want to keep. They want to do a 4-lane. Well, I don't know if we really know what they want to do out to I-25. I don't know if I heard exactly what that was.
We're just changing the designation, there's not going to be any physical improvements.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think they want to do some physical improvements to Owl Canyon Road, but that's about it.
All the improvements physically would be to the north.
Yeah,
In our area.
And they can save- so they can-
County with some signs.
yeah. So they can save that $90 million without building this road, right? Build a portion of it and do some improvements,
Right.
and so that saves money there. And then they can get us to take over maintenance after like 20 years. I mean, what typically happens when the state wants to get rid of a highway designation like this, they'll pay the entity 20 years worth of maintenance. And then they'll say, that's it then. We'll give you your money for 20 years, but then after those 20 years are up, we're free and clear of that.
Okay, so ask for everything now, or ask for everything 15 years from now.
Right, find out everything that you need.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to have a negligible impact on our traffic. We're going to have it, almost
Operate.
nobody does. It's-
Right, it's going to help Fort Collins probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
It will not help.
It won't help
Lot
us.
Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, physically wise, the road stays the same. You really won't notice much of a difference, and our patterns won't change day to day, really.
So it's just signs, maps, directions. Okay.
Funding.
Yeah.
And fun. Yeah.
And
That's
funding.
probably the big one.
So what would be the timing and the designation change? Or this
Well, they're
process?
doing a 6 to 8 month feasibility study on this.
Okay.
So they'll try to figure out in that time frame, but then it will go into,
And then there's a lot of other players. The county, Larimer County, they may not buy into it.
Yeah.
City of Berthoud was not.
person that's not very excited.
When we talked to them.
Is this a vote to a
There's a lot
vote?
There's a lot of moving parts in this.
Is there an option, or can the CDOT just mandate this, or does this have to be
Well, here-
a vote of some kind?
Well, kind of the option to that my understanding is CDOT has thrown out there is their option if cities and municipalities don't buy into it is to designate the current 287 as the business route, and more or less they don't really fund projects or improvements for maintenance on the business route. So it's kind of a
It'll still be 287 business.
So either way, we're going to lose the funding.
But do I understand correctly that if they change the routing there, the city of Lionel would have more flexibility on, I was just thinking about how just 1 or 2 meetings ago, we were talking about the Main Street corridor improvements and some of the options that may be down the road there. Is it fair to say that if CDOT were to abandon 287 for this corridor, that city of Lionel would have more flexibility on how it chooses to implement the recommendations from the Main Street corridor study?
We think so.
Yes.
That's intriguing.
Okay. Well, thank you. Next on our docket is public invited to be heard.
Hello. Staff
Welcome.
Nurse Shane Butterfield, thank you for your email today.
Sure.
And your communication. So, quick background, because I'm sure nobody knows.
Yeah.
My friend Megan here, and I live in Clover Creek, there, the neighborhood by airport and Clover Basin. And our children ride their bikes to school, and for son was hit by a car again today, not again, another child was hit today, and it was her son who was hit while crossing the road. And so he's okay. Of course, traumatized and a little bruised and banged up, but we're just feeling at a loss. And so I'm like, what's a different angle? So I decided to email Bicycle Long Lot and communicated with Scott. And we come here, we know that people have been talking often with the city, but we need guidance and advice on where do we go next to really help our kids be safe when they're trying to get to school. Because this is, I'm not sure of the count of how many children, 4 or 5 kids who have been hit on their bicycles by people driving when these kids are just trying to get to school. So we're really just coming to you. Where do we go now and what do we do? And of course, mama bears when their kids are hurt, they probably all wanted to come tonight. We're like, okay, that's the, and so want to be heard and also want to know what are our next steps that we can do to help get them safely across the street. It's a big question, I know.
So is this across Airport or Clover Basin?
Across the
So I don't know where other kids have been hit. It's all at that same intersection. But my son was going north on Airport, so crossing over Clover Basin, north on Airport, on the east side of Airport. And he had a green crosswalk, but the person coming south on Airport that was turning left had a yellow flashing arrow. So he's the one who hit my son, and he said the sun got in his eyes, which I do believe him. I mean, we all know at times in Colorado driving at the dusk and dawn and all that the sun can be in really blinding places. But so anyway, that is one thing that we see with that is that it seems that there should always be a red light when the crosswalk is green. It doesn't seem to make any sense that there's a possibility that somebody could turn. Like, why not just stop them? It's not gonna really harm anything to make them stop when the crosswalk is green instead of kind of giving them the option when there could be a lot of factors that keep them from being able to see the kids. So anyway, that's what happened today. I'm not sure exactly where in the intersection the other kids have been hit, but as Shane said, this is like the 4th or 5th kid that has been hit in the last couple of years in that same intersection. And it's all at that time when they're trying to get to school. So,
and we have the kids ride in a pack. We're thinking if there's a bunch of them, is keeping them together, they're more noticeable. We've tried to teach our kids making eye contact with the driver, and so we're trying all of those strategies. And granted, kids are, sometimes when they're in a pack together, maybe they're not paying attention as well, but that shouldn't still be on them. So we just don't know what to do next. So we're coming to you today, just kind of put names and faces and see if you have ideas, and we'll keep at this until we find some sort of change or something that can help us.
yeah, we feel at a loss when they're doing the right thing and obeying the traffic signals. It's not like they're can just go in whenever they want to go, or we've reinforced and really seeing them do the right thing, wait and not just go. And so then what do you tell your kid when they're doing the right thing and yet they still get hit? It seems like there should be something more that can be done to ensure their safety.
Great, thanks.
Sure. To step, do we, as a community, treat areas around schools differently, or with special treatment there as it relates to some of the blinking yellow versus the red, or are school areas treated consistently across the community?
For the most part, I believe they're treated consistently, and I think if this is something we want to bring an item back next month, I think we can provide a lot of information on.
Yeah, so what typically happens for information is the board doesn't typically directly address questions. It gives staff the month or so to go
Sure.
through, and then it gives us the ability to direct staff or ask staff to come back with an answer for you. Especially since it happened today. Don't expect that staff has everything. Yeah, exactly. That's there. We know some of the backstory, and I kind of emailed you some of the things that we know is going on. So I know that they have some things that we can prepare and put together next month, at the next month's meeting. That's okay.
And we don't understand, like, even the crossing guards, understand kind of a partnership with the school district and the city. And when we have parents now, we're like, okay, we're going to have to go out there every morning now and cross the street. But educating us so that we then can make the decisions to kind of work with the city and work with the district, just to make sure we can get something done and change.
Right. I think we're all on board on the same thing of trying to get that done. So I think we'll put it on for January, and we'll discuss that. And in the meantime, I know someone from the school district is going to reach out, if he hasn't already, and talk to you about the school district side.
That's great.
Mr. Kreger did, yeah. So there's a program called Safe Routes, and they've been talking about this particular area too. It's kind of out of our jurisdiction, but it's theirs. But
So in January, you should come back, like how?
yeah, I'll follow up when we have an agenda, unless something radically comes up or there's not enough other things or we're not going to have a quorum. I'll bring that up and I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
That's there. So I'll hear from staff. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have no idea how this works. So we have a group of like 7 or 8 people from our neighborhood, parents who want to go to city council tomorrow night. Should we encourage them to do that? How does this, will that make a difference? Is that a good?
Yeah, you're like, okay, everybody, warning, red flag.
What I've seen to be very effective before is having a spokesperson and speaking, have one person have the group stand up and be the spokesperson, and sometimes you can get extra time with council, like instead of 3 minutes,
Right after.
you can say, hey, we can have everybody speak or 1 or 2 spokespeople can speak. So if you wanted to do it that way, that's been very effective in the past, to have the folks stand up behind you.
Great, yeah.
So we'd have the one person speak for maybe the 3 minutes, and I think you'll definitely get your point across.
Sure.
So that's been effective. Yeah.
Right.
But you can all speak too. I mean, that's the message.
Okay.
But then it gets repetitive and it kind of gets lost that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes
That's what we
sense.
don't want.
Yeah.
I'd also just recommend that since Joan Peck, who's not here, is our council liaison related to the Transportation Advisory Board, since it's a topic related to her, feel free to email her first, just so she has that knowledge that you're coming. Joan Peck, yeah. So she's on the website.
And I'm not sure if you can get this information in time, but if you could come with some information on the other children and where those locations were.
Okay.
Well, I know.
We'll present that in January.
Oh, you've got that?
They'll have that in January.
Okay.
Okay.
I do think, I know one of the other moms is thinking about coming, that her
Okay.
son,
All right.
so, whose son was hit last year or 2 years ago. And he broke his ankle, so thankfully my son just walking away with bumps and bruises and scrapes and road rash, but hers broke his ankle.
And a police report was made on this?
Yes.
The driver was issued a citation. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you
All
for
right.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing on our radar. Thanks for putting on the radar here.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yes. So we can keep moving. You can stay here, Mr. Costa.
You guys are very on.
We have full faith in you. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thank you. Next item we have up is 2018 annual report.
All right, so we're asking for your board to take action on our annual report for 2018. We had meetings, we talked about stuff that was on our work plan. I believe we accomplished everything, most everything that was on our work plan. Some of the bigger items we brought to the board and talked about capital improvement projects, current and future programs, multi-use corridors. I believe we had a couple of meetings where we talked about different aspects of EMUCs. We presented on the Southwest Operation Study. We gave our TV updates and talked about ballot issues, transportation ballot issues for the November election. We had several opportunities to talk about quiet zones. We presented high crash locations and Main Street corridor study. We've also included the work plan that we met and discussed in July. Any comments, questions, discussions about any of this? Feel free.
The only question I would have is, I mean, it's very the format we've had in the past. So the only time this time struck me is kind of repeating what we actually voted for. If we could add the action items or something that was on there. Just the biggest question I get when people say, "Hey, I like on the TV. What do you actually do, or do you just listen all the time?" And I was like, "Oh, well, there are action items that we actually vote on, and we do propose things once in a while." So I would just like to add that if we could.
Okay.
To the TAB list. It's not a huge list.
Yeah, you do that.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just so I understand, this is just a summary of what we've done.
This is
So
summary
what
of
has
what
been
we've
done,
Yes.
not at all what we're looking forward to doing.
Correct.
Yeah, split it up into two.
All right.
Usually it's all done together, but we
Sure.
it might be easier,
Yeah.
more direct to
I'm going to give everyone homework this
Right.
month, so trying a little different here.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I guess we're going to take this up as a motion. So I need somebody to propose the motion to.
I'm happy to make a motion to provide the TAB communication report to City Council.
Thank you, Neil. Do I have a second?
Sorry.
David seconds. Any discussion on the motion that we already sort of discussed beforehand for the 2018 annual report? None? Seeing none, then we'll close discussion. Those are in favor of supporting the 2018 annual report with the only change that we can add the action items for the 2018 year into the report, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously, so we're done with that. So our next information item is the Dr. Cog funding update, which I believe is about the Kaufman Street.
Correct. Thank you. So just to let you know, we just really wanted to give you a brief update, as we'll have other things on this list. But it was just interesting to hear that I-25 just received $20 million, and there's a big kind of thing that was talking about North I-25 getting this funding for $20 million. We very quietly have gotten $21 million for 119. So what this is it's every 4 years. We actually can go for funding every 2 years, but every 4 years there's it's called the Transportation Improvement Program. And so that's federal funding that's given to this metropolitan planning organization, Dr. Cog, and we all kind of vie for it. And this year they're kind of doing it a little differently, where they're breaking it up into two different groups, and that's why I say we'll be coming back to you later with kind of the next piece. But the first group, and I think we chatted a little bit about this with you earlier, or maybe a few months ago, but it's really, they're splitting it into going after regional projects first, and then we all kind of get together in our sub-regions, our counties, or one of the sub-regions, and then we go for local projects. So our county, Bolton County, went for a regional project that was the State Highway 119, and it consisted of 3 parts. It was the 28th Street Business Access Transit Lanes, which is kind of just a funny word for right turn lanes for everybody except for buses can go straight through and get the bypass piece of that. And they get their own kind of lane. That way they share with the right turns, but it's so few traffic. Yeah, you get a pretty good bus running on that. So they're going to continue those lanes. Actually, they have some of, if you think of where Target is and REI, they have some in that area.
Right.
Well, Whole Foods, more like, I guess, north around that Pearl Street area. And so they're going to carry those further north. Boulder County was looking for a queue jump or a bus bypass lane on Highway 119 and 52. So as you're heading northbound on 119, you know, you always back up in the evenings. So they wanted to build a bypass lane that would bypass all that. And then we had our Kaufman Street project. So we, I think you guys have all seen this before, but it's basically, this is kind of looking northbound at 5th Avenue. So this is 5th Avenue Cross. We have all of this right-of-way existing. It's just a matter of how it looks today versus how it can look in the future. So this is all part of the enhanced multi-use corridor planning effort that we did. So this is just taking this road and looking at it differently, but using the same exact template. So you'll see we have bike lanes, and these really are meant to be more separated than they look on this template. I mean, they kind of mix with traffic a little bit here, but then they get separated further north. And then we have the bus-only lanes. Then we have exactly the same number of lanes that we have out there today for traffic, general traffic, and then we have some parking, but we've realigned the parking to be parallel instead of diagonal, which saves a lot of space for us. And then you can see some platforms as well in some of these areas. So just to give you a quick overview of what we've received so far this has been board approved from Dr. Cog board, so they've approved the basic package of projects. They're going to go back. They played with one project that didn't have anything to do with this, but they had some questions about one other project, which was the 16th Street Mall project. And so this kind of gives you an idea of on what caliber we are, or what kind of level we're on here. The 16th Street Mall is on par with the same kind of discussions that we're having here. But they had some questions about that, so they're going to have to go back for formal approval at their next board meeting. I think that's going to happen actually in January because of the holidays. But this just remains in the package. So what we've done is we have a $150,000 match from Longmont, which is great, and we're able to compare that with $500,000 from the Dr. Cog group. So for federal funding, we're able to put in $750,000 for initial design. So you can get past this conceptual level look, and I think you've seen these two. I mean, I'll just show you these really quick. These are the original cross sections that were done. So this was really to show like 3rd and Kaufman and 4th and 5th and all the way up the corridor. So it just kind of showed a very conceptual idea of how this corridor can look up to about 9th Avenue. And then at 9th, we transitioned back to just general. The buses still run north of 9th up to 11th, but they can just run in general traffic because there's so little traffic right now. So, but we're going to have to take this out to the public, and that's what a lot of this design funding can be used for. And that's going to be available starting in October of next year. So we'll move quickly into that. We'll do the design piece of this. It'll probably take a full year for that design work to get done. And then we're looking for construction dollars to start in October of 2022. So not too long, but that's when the construction dollars can start flowing. It's really fiscal year 23 is what it's called. So just want to let you know that that's out there and those are moving forward. And again, we'll come to you with kind of once we get the full report from Dr. Cog on this, we'll give you exactly what happened with that. And then we'll start talking about our next level of projects that we plan to submit for at a more local level, the sub-regional level. So that's really where we're going from here. We'll get you that report as well. We're going to get that up to City Council just to kind of keep them informed of what we're doing to try to meet their work plan and the different items that we've been working on with Envision Longmont as well. So.
Leon.
It's great news, obviously.
Yeah.
Really great news. I was reading the article. Thanks for including the article. I saw when it came out originally, and one of the questions I had was, is it your understanding for the diagonal, looks like a mile in either direction from Highway 52, that the jump lanes, I'm assuming the bus would essentially be on the shoulder. Has there been any conversation that you know of that would allow for safe continuing for bicyclists that choose to ride on the diagonal in terms of whether there would be some additional accommodations other than having a bus come up their yin yang?
Right. I think that's a technical term. I'm trying to check on their drawings. They did provide some drawings of how the bus would work, and I think they're talking about actually, it looks like from what I can see here, they're trying to do some extension of that, more than just the shoulder, so it could be shoulder plus.
Gotcha.
But eventually, with the whole project, they do want to move the bicycle facility to a whole different area, so you're not even mixed with traffic. So it's almost like Lobo Express.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And so that's really the overall look. And this is just kind of the first piece of it, but the Boulder County has been, and they're the ones who kind of submitted the State Highway 52 bypass piece. And so they're very cognizant of the idea that bikes need to run away from these, run away, get away from these buses and be separated from the bus. And you're right, you do not, I mean, you get a lot of folks on bicycles today, even today, a cooler day, you get a lot of folks on the diagonal who really need that for their transportation on bicycles. So I can come up with more exact pieces of this because it is the Boulder County portion of the project, but I can find out exactly. I'll forward your question on and find out how they're going to.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Phil, so the First to 9th Avenue piece is $7 million. Is that what?
Correct.
Is that right? So
That's an estimate.
Yeah,
That's kind of this conceptual level estimate.
Right.
So it's all based on these drawings. So we really need to drill down a little further into that and get the design work to tell us exactly what the cost will be. So we're thinking we've done $150,000 worth of match, but we might have to expand that if the cost of the project goes up as well. But I think we can budget that into capacity. And we have that capacity to budget that in future years, especially with this being out in 2023.
right.
So if the design does come up with much more cost, and we were very conservative with the cost, so I'm hoping that we can kind of stick to that. But inflation and all those different things.
What drives the cost on this if the right-of-way is already in place?
I think it's all these additional facilities that you're seeing. We're doing some things at the crossings, at the intersections.
So
We're putting in the islands. We're completely reconstructing that street, so it'll be a whole different or a whole new pavement surface because it's already it's really needs to be replaced in the next couple of years anyway. So this is perfect timing for what we're trying to do. But it's all the work we would have done to put into that street just to get a new surface, and then we'd have to make all the ADA. Meet all the ADA standards at wherever there's crossings. So there's a lot of work in that, and then those median pieces, and then restructuring the parking piece of that, the islands that you see in there. So again, a very conservative estimate.
There's going to be some cost in the signals as well. A lot of those are some of our older ones in town. They're the old stovepipes, and I think we're anticipating that we'd be providing some sort of transit priority. So that's going to be a cost that this project will bear as well.
Okay.
We're kind of excited about that transit priority because as the bus approaches, obviously, we'll try to get green lights for the bus all the way up the corridor, and everybody else will kind of have to stop and wait for that. But hopefully, it'll make that timing on the bus more attractive.
Just another question on safety. Taking left turns with the bus there, have there been reports on how that works? That people are trying to get into a business and not seeing a bus come up behind them on the other side of them?
That'll be part of the final design piece too, because you're right, we don't want people necessarily using the bus lane unless it's safe to do so. I mean, if we want to make it a combo, kind of like the left turn, kind of like what Boulder's doing with the right turns.
Right, yeah.
But my first thought is we don't want to do that either, but it might become like a Main Street piece where you have to turn left at the intersection and then you have to work your way back to the business you need to get to. But we'll have to do outreach as part of this too, so if the businesses say, hey, what are you doing to us here? I mean, we're really going to have to take that into account. But I think we're going to make it better overall with access to businesses, with people walking and biking and using the bus.
Right, there's just a lot of mid-block lots all down Kaufman. So I'm not as worried as much as the parking. Since you look at it, and it's like a whole bunch of parking lots, but you're just taking lefts into those lots.
What's the anticipated frequency of that bus?
Right. I mean, during certain parts of the day, it's going to be. Right now they have 15-minute frequencies, but if you've got buses passing in this corridor,
right,
that could be a bus going one direction every 15 minutes, and the other one coming, on that 7.5 or whatever that one works.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not going to be super frequent, so that'll be part of this.
Definitely a concern, but
So it takes everything off of Main Street, right? all bus traffic comes off of Main Street, not just
We
the,
may still have we think it'll take all buses off. It's really meant for the regionals though.
right, that's what.
So the locals, we've always kind of said that Main Street might still have a local bus that runs on Main Street, but we don't know what, RTD runs the bus system, right? So
Right,
we would ask them to consider this as well. And we really want this to be, because the local would have to stop at every block basically anyway. And so would we want the traffic signals to change for the locals and as well as the regionals? Or would we like the locals to block a regional bus? That would be the worst case, right? If we had a local bus that was stopped here and then a regional that had to sit back here waiting for that local bus to go. So we may try to separate some of those smaller local buses over onto Kimbark or onto Main Street. But it's up in the air. That's a great point.
okay.
Great thought. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Phil. Next one up is neighborhood traffic mitigation.
Sure. So I don't know how long, Scott, you might be the only one that knows anything about traffic mitigation. It's a program that's been around for, started in the early 2000s really, and the current edition of the program was adopted by council in 2006. This is the program through which neighbors can call and say, hey, I've got speeders in my neighborhood, I want a speed bump. This is how those calls are addressed. And it's really a two-part program. There's one to address the neighborhood calls, and then the other is on all the city neighborhood collector streets. The city, we've proactively prioritized all these streets. We've scored them based on speed, volume, crashes, pedestrian generators, crashes, and ranked them. And we try to work through a handful of these every year. It definitely depends on funding, staff resources, and workload available. It's a very labor-intensive process. It does require a lot of neighborhood meetings and a lot of feedback from those neighbors. So tackling 5 to 10 a year is not really feasible. It's usually in the 1 to 3 would be a busy year of getting all of these projects done. Right now, this year, the one that we're working on is with left-hand drive between Sunset and South Bowen. We initially sent out about 200 mailers, invited 200 different households to an open house that we had last week, and we had 4 neighbors show up. So we had 4 neighbors show up. So we had a solid turnout.
4 different neighbors or 4 from one house?
two from one house. Two from other houses. But we ended up having a really good discussion and came up with a draft mitigation plan that we're going to sort of send back out to that same 200 households, and they'll get a chance to vote on it whether they want to implement it or not. What we're looking at doing is 2 different speed tables at a couple of locations we identified, and some curb extensions and some corners that have some site obstruction concerns. So it was a good meeting. I think there was good feedback from the 4 people that were there, and we'll see what happens when we send the vote out and what kind of turnout we get on that. So if the vote comes back and it's a no, we won't build it, but if it's a yes, it's something that we'll include with our rehab project this year. So it's a street that we're going to be repaving anyway. We're going to be fixing concrete repaving, so it's a good opportunity to try and incorporate that type of project.
So are people going, like, when they go westbound from Bowen, do they just speed up, cutting across over to Sunset? Is that?
Yes,
the
we were
problem?
seeing, so 85th percentile speeds are around 30 to 31, so it's a 25 mile an hour street. So yes, we are seeing a little bit of speeding on there for sure. Fortunately, not a high crash location area, but
Yeah. Yeah, on the north side, there aren't many houses that face the street, right? It's all on the south side of the street.
mostly, yeah. There's still a few on the north side, but probably more driveways on the south side.
Okay.
Was this on your radar because of complaints or because of crashes, or how did it raise to the top?
A couple of things of how it rose to the top. So one, I've got a new staff person in this role that's doing this program, and rather than saying, hey, well, why don't you try this on 3rd Avenue, go run this process, figure out how it works. It was one where it scored in the top 15 in the ranking, and it was one that's on the rehab this year. So it was a good kind of get your feet wet project to get it out there and get this new staff person up to speed on that type of project. So
But still, how did you guys find out like that street? Because there's lots of streets. So was it something that the neighbors did write in about speeding problems?
So this was, like I said, it's one of the top 15 in the prioritization. So it's a neighborhood collector. So it's ranked. We have 80 some neighborhood collectors in the city.
Okay, so of all the streets or segments.
And it's one that was on our rehab schedule for this year. So it was a neighborhood collector, top 15, and rehab. So those factors together was how we decided to.
And you had collected speed data. All right.
Yeah, and we'll follow it up with after data. So assuming we implement the project, we'll follow it up with after data, so we'll have a good comparison of did we meet our goal of what the speeds are on.
So just as background, as we start planning next year's rehab program, where we go in and we either mill resurface or we may put down some other treatments, we look at what else we may want to do in that road. Because if we do mill the road and resurface it, we don't want to go in for like 5 more years. So we work on improving the concrete, improving ADA in the area, and we also look at water lines. If we need to go in and replace any water lines if they're older, we want to get in before we top coat the road. So we look at kind of all aspects of our road system and our utilities to make sure that, that it's really bad in the public's eyes if you pave a road, then the next year you come in and put in the water line. So we try that, we've learned a few things as we've kind of moved through it.
Yeah.
Public improvement. So just that's kind of what drives some of our things as we look at, and we say rehab, we look at the rehab program, and we want to get in before they do take on those roads. So we get more longevity out of our asphalt.
So the customer or client or people's complaints, is that part of the metric, or is it mostly structural?
So for the rehab part specific and structural?
Well, just to get it kind of...
It's going to be a combination of both. We'll listen to what residents tell us, and if we, that goes to just about anything we do. If it's we have an issue with traffic signals, we'll look at it. If we hear from residents some things, safety issues, we'll look at them, and it may, if it's a larger scale project, we may not be able to afford it, but we put it into a work program. So we do listen to when residents call in or write in, but we always try to, when we try to respond, we always try to look at an issue. Tonight I was already looking at that signal at Clover Basin and Airport.
Do you by chance know if Francis Street between 3rd and 9th happens to be on that top 15 list?
I wish I had brought the list with me. I don't have it on the top of my head, but I can definitely provide that to you.
It sounds like you have the list there.
Sure.
Does the link here go to it, or?
I believe it's on there. I don't know if it's the most current ranking on this link, so, but I'm happy to send
Maybe
it
just
out.
for next month's packet.
Sure. I can send it out in an email this week.
Even better. Thanks.
Great. So next on our information items is the 2019 proposed TAB work plan.
So if you look at the packet here, the work plan looks very similar to what we've seen in the past. The wrinkle that I want to throw in this year is I want you guys to take a look at this. And I know there's some issues that have come up over this last year, the last 6 months of things that we want to see in the work plan. So I really want to get your guys' buy-in on this. I want you guys to provide input on this. Are we doing what the board wants to be doing? Do you guys want to see different stuff than we're bringing to you? I've included the powers, the code section 290 of the Transportation Advisory Board that really defines the role. So within that context, what do you guys let us know what you want to see or talk about during the year?
3 quick thoughts.
Sure.
First, it is super helpful to have the 2020 budget item early in the year, long before the approval has to come forward there. So thank you for including that, because that way we feel like we can actually provide meaningful feedback at a time where it's not going to throw a monkey wrench into the works there. So I thought that was great. Given the conversation from the 2 ladies that came earlier about the crashes that happened at that one particular intersection, and it was super helpful, I think, last meeting there to talk a bit about the bike infrastructure map within the community. I noticed that the bicycle and pedestrian capital improvement topic was just listed as needed. I think it would be helpful to have that part of the work plan for like a specific, maybe it's just Q4 of next year, or like a specific window where we as an advisory board there can look at the map of the community and say, hey, there's needs that have arisen based on the crash data that we've learned, based on feedback, where we can provide feedback and say, I think we might want to revisit the prioritization of some of the improvements there rather than just as needed there. So that was the second thought there. And the third is, I didn't see any reference here to electric vehicle infrastructure on here, and it may be that I'm new on the tab here, so I apologize if this is a topic that's been widely discussed 2 years ago, but it would be helpful to at least have a sense of, is there an existing map of EV infrastructure plans, there is this existing strategy? If not, that's fine, but just it would be helpful to, since there's so much focus on EV infrastructure across the state, especially in light of the Volkswagen settlement, it would be good to keep that part of a local radar.
Okay. So I think what my thoughts are on this, and we can...
What's that?
Are you saying your homework is done?
Just cross it off the list.
And we don't have to make a decision. We can continue discussing this tonight, but give it some thought. And if you could give me feedback a week before our next meeting, then I can try and adjust it as per comments, and then we'll discuss again in January and take action on the work plan at that time.
So we'll try to send out something early, just to say,
Yep.
reminder.
Homework due.
Homework due.
Thank you for including this as part of the packet. That was really helpful.
Next, comments from board members. Go.
I've already exhausted mine.
I have two. On 9th Avenue, the part that's been upgraded, I think, looks terrific.
Oh yeah, the railroad tracks.
Well, actually, I wasn't even going to talk about the railroad. That's the best tracks in town, I'm sure. I mean, you ride across those and it's like there's no tracks there. Unlike on Airport, which now you got to hang on as you go over the tracks. But that's another topic for another day. The one thing I was concerned about with 9th is that the tracks, it's good, it's got side paths, but then they disappear for some, I don't know, a quarter mile. And then the neighborhood starts where you do have good sidewalks and bike shoulders, and then it stops very abruptly just before that new intersection at the top of 9th. And they've got I don't know what you call those, where the sidewalk kind of comes out into the street. So I don't know, I saw that and I thought, shoot, we should have had them put a bike path there instead of poking that sidewalk out into the street. And I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are. And are there plans, first of all, to connect the recently upgraded area to the track, to the railroad section, and then is there any plans to do anything on the east end?
So kind of a two-part answer. So yes, we've got a project for 2019 that's looking at making some of those connections that you're talking about. Definitely realize that that's a shortfall that we have in our system, and want to try and make that happen. And then the part two of that would be kind of east of the intersection from 9th to Main is another part where we're looking at a way to try and fit some bike lanes in that. And that would probably entail taking some parking and a bit of a road diet from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. So kind of a two-part project, but...
Are you talking about east to Hover?
Mostly east of Hover.
Not to Hover.
Just that little piece, right? Just to get...
Right before the intersection.
Okay.
We've been talking about
I think it's worth looking at the 9th Avenue piece next year, I think that's a piece that we'll address, is looking at that striping on how to make that work, that connection through there, because that bike lane just comes out from the curb, right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
comes out
Both
of
are like,
Right, and if you're not paying attention riding east, you're gonna hit the curb. I mean, the bike, the stripe stops and the curb comes out, you know, in another, I don't know, 10 yards, so. The other thing is, and I apologize for missing this, but, so, you know, we lost both funding opportunities for streets, but we did get the Dr. Cog, and I'm wondering if we didn't expect the Dr. Cog, but we were hoping for the two, you know, there was the 109 and the 110. And so are we kind of in a wash here? Like we ended up with, you know, where do we stand? Are we going to be slashing our budget concept for what we would have done based on those two not passing, or what do you?
But we're just kind of carrying on. As,
That's
I mean,
what I heard.
we didn't really expect. Well, we can't expect that we're going to get this windfall. I mean, it's always fun to think about what we're going to do with an extra $3 million every year.
Yeah.
The city budget. I think we had some people already spend it. On quiet zones.
I was already spending it in my mind.
The funding from either of those two measures, well, one of them would not have given money to local municipalities.
yeah, once.
110 would have, it was not programmed into our budget. So we don't have to make any revisions or changes. As we move forward, there are some current changes and challenges in next year's budget. Quiet zones was not originally programmed in. We've gotten direction from council. Basically, they want to see shovels in the ground by 2020. So that's part of what our plan is to start building something. One of the things that we will be looking at, which will probably be brought back before this board, is, as we discussed, Public Works discussed as part of our budget, was the existing street tax is basically, it's not a permanent tax. We got direction from council to bring that back to the referendum for next year to make it permanent. Part of that is involving around the quiet zone funding mechanisms. You can't bond off of temporary funding. So we've never been able to do that. The council has a limit up to about $6 million they can bond on, but that job's going to be a little bit more. So that was part of our philosophy, and one of the items we'll probably bring back as informational here is that the council wanted us to bring forward a funding plan by July of next year as part of their budget discussions. So that's part of the reason why we're pushing for the outreach, get design going, get numbers, so we can have those plans. So as we craft our budget for next year, some of the changes that have cropped up, some of the stuff you'll see is we've been talking about the job on Boston Avenue that the county has been playing games with. We're supposed to fund it, and that's been on again and off again. Now it's on again. So
Thanks today.
fortunately, that's not a new ticket for the city. So yeah, as of today, it was on. So we'll see. You'll see some of these. Our budget's always in kind of fluctuating to adapt to kind of changing conditions. So as we bring forward kind of budget discussions, we'll unveil kind of what our CIP plan is for next year. And we just had some adjustments and changes, and so even though the budget just got approved, it's ready to be changing. So
back to
we're always prepared to hear new things, and then some of the items, like we said, things go to rehab. As we do our rehab program, we're tying it into that on some of the roads we're doing for EMUX, where we'll be adding bike lanes on roads that we maybe reducing parking. So we have some of those that are already in plans for next year.
As you look at that funding plan this summer or leading up to this summer, do you anticipate that the funding plan will be looking at different revenue levels or being able to have the sales tax at a consistent flat level?
Well, we look at what our finance people project. They project kind of a flat growth rate a little bit. So we utilize those numbers, and then we also have any unspent money from the year before carries forward. So once we know and can identify those numbers, that's what we start basing our budget on, and projects and what we can afford. And as we throw in, also remember you have an operating budget we fund as well. So some of our signal improvements or signal maintenance relies on that a lot, and those are pretty, usually they go up a little bit each year, but not significant. But there's two components to that budget. We start with the CIP, and then we roll over to operating.
Now, that makes sense. I guess it sounds like there's currently a tax that's set to sunset every X number of years there. So one of the questions is looking for a longer time horizon or a perpetual permanent funding stream there through that tax. I guess the question is, as you look at that permanent funding stream, is one of the scenarios you're looking at considering potentially changing what that current tax rate is from today, or is that not on the table?
It's a current 3/4 cent sales tax, and it's been that same 3/4 cent since it was first initiated in the 80s. So, good question.
We're not looking at it currently, but when we start a budget next year, that might change. And that would be, what I've seen in the past, we bring that in front of you to get your recommendation. So it won't be a surprise if those items are discussed.
I don't know if a lot of you remember the way we used to present those budgets, but you'd always see the first year of the tax, we had all that cash, but then you'd watch it drop off, and by year 5 we couldn't even count on it because we didn't know if we'd had it, so it was zeroed out basically. So you'd see all of our budget kind of go into the negative. But we tried to budget it down. We'd always have to scale it back down and then wait to see. So
I think the current
and now we have 10 years, so it stretches
the
out.
current tax goes to 2026, I think, was what the date was, I recall.
Yeah.
Melanie?
Yeah, I just have one thing. Can we get an update on the status of the South Pratt Parkway Bridge project? It seems like it's going quite a bit longer than the original plan.
It's still fall.
That's a lot of concrete to pour.
It's still fall. It's slightly behind schedule. They are still, they did get the news on, their time steel now. They're working on, I think they were working Friday night on the south side. They were working on the water line lowering. And then I believe they're going to be tying in the paving later this week on the north side. But we can get you we'll get you a better update on that.
Okay. Do you guys, off the top of your head, like what drove it to get behind, or just a
Was it
bigger?
out in the water, the main project?
They hit on the east side. There was a rather large communications duct bank, and that, while it was shown on the plans, was not exactly laid out design-wise. So they've had to accommodate to work around it, and they actually had to leave it in place and attach it to the. They left it on the old bridge while they demolished the west side, and then it took a little bit longer for them as they were working around it. And you have delays on construction on some things, so, but we'll get you a little bit better response. Okay, a little more detail. And hopefully a finished time frame. And it will, because it's ready in the winter, they will not be paving. The plan will call for it to have a top course over top of it, but that will not happen until the spring. So we're right in the rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we started the meeting, we had this little comment of I've been here for 6 years, and there's been a couple things that have changed. One of the big ones was street fund tax. It would used to be 5 years at a time, and we're like, well, this is kind of ridiculous that we don't do it for 10 years. And it was very like a culture shift. It was very interesting talking with staff at the time of like, well, what? You would extend like that? Sure, that would be great, and we could do stuff. And now we're moving the conversation further to make it go permanent. I think the intention in the first place to go to 10 years was to budget better, to leverage more money from other sources, because you have that money. And so the next extension of that conversation is to be able to bond big projects and be able to fund them over 20, 30 years or whatever you need to do to do that type of thing. So I think it's kind of interesting to see that change. It's from basically being a pothole tax to now really big projects and big things like that. The only question I have, and I know you don't have really the power for it, but if there is a process, how do we discuss with RTD route changes? Or we've had a couple of people bring up I know the new hospital has been on the list. There's been a few people who have asked about Smuckers, if that's going to be close, or if it gets to the hospital, then at least it gets you closer. So a lot of those people who are going to be getting, pretty good pay for, factory jobs, want to know if there was, our transportation system would support that as well.
Well,
Kinda
we
gets-
are beholden, you know better than most folks that we're beholden to RTD, and I think everybody here knows the kind of struggles we've gone through. We saw these different projects coming online years ago, and we made the request to RTD to say, hospital's kind of a big deal, and we think people will start to grow around that hospital too. I mean, there's going to be support facilities and restaurants probably, and we know houses are coming as well to the north, so there's a lot going to happen there. We knew about Walmart, obviously, and we were kind of promised a Sam's Club at some point down there, but that didn't come to fruition. But anyway, it is about continually requesting those items from RTD. And we are working with them, quite frankly, with the whole idea of First and Main. And maybe that's worth another presentation, or get RTD in for the First and Main discussion to talk about where we are with that. But once that comes online, and once you see these projects like the Kaufman Street project is obviously fully dependent on a First and Main type facility and running the regional buses then from First and Main up to 8th and it's really First and Kaufman is where that's going to be centered. So it would be that First and Kaufman all the way up Kaufman to 8th and Kaufman, and connecting those two facilities with regional buses. So when that happens, and all throughout this bus rapid transit process, we've been talking to RTD about how can we get better local service to feed into this. It's supposed to be like almost like a rail line, rail experience on a bus. And so there'll be very few stops. And so that's kind of, we're cautiously optimistic that if we can get that running, we'll also need those local buses. And so they're already programming in much more local bus service for us. And we're asking them to look at those points to east and to the west for some of our other conversations on that. So we're trying to get them to spread the system out. We really need, it's going to happen over the next couple of years. It's not going to happen right away, but we've got RTD's commitment to start looking at the local bus system and changing up how we run that and make it more frequent and make it run to more places in the city. So it actually is useful.
Yeah.
And at that point, we'll probably have to take away the ride-free aspect of it. Or we'll see what that really means. But then it'll be actually worth the $3. That's going to be the new rate starting in January. The $3 for a local bus trip. If it actually goes somewhere and runs frequently enough that you can actually make it work.
Make it work. So is there chicken and egg? I mean, do they just sit and wait? I mean, I don't ever hear or feel that there's like studies of, hey, this could potentially be a route. I don't even understand their process of how that works.
That's a good
right?
point,
It's
yeah.
just like, how do you find people who would go on a bus? And you just know that, hey, there's a hospital with X number of beds that should generate X number of trips.
What RTD seems to be very dependent on is these surveys that they do every 4 or 5 years. And so, but they're very dependent on these surveys. And so they always point to them and they say, well, nobody really said that they were willing to, that they really need to get out to this point. Well,
Because it doesn't
it's
exist.
because it doesn't exist.
Right.
And so now as it exists, we have to then wait almost 5 years after it's operating. And we all know that it's going to be a big job generator and folks will need to get there for other things, for services. So it's a tough, it's something, kind of the secret desire of mine anyway, probably nobody else's, is to kind of take over that bus, the local bus system, and we have us try to direct that. We've been talking to RTD for years about
That's a secret.
Yeah, don't tell this guy right here.
Yeah. I thought that was legal to even mention.
Yeah.
Regional transportation.
It's called the Film Transportation
We
District.
let them do the regional stuff. That's fine. They can continue to do the regional stuff, but we just had such a great success working with Fort Collins, Transport in Fort Collins, which runs all their buses. And they just have a whole different philosophy of how, they want to move people.
Right.
And so what if the bus only costs $1.25? They don't care that it costs $1.25. They want to move people. And so it's harder for them to go to multiple different fare structures, but RTD doesn't care, right? So they're going to charge a fare to go to Boulder, a different fare to go to Southwest Longmont. It's really strange and inequitable, but yeah, that's the secret hidden agenda, is to somehow. And I think we're starting to talk, this is the other super secret hidden agenda, is that like the whole Boulder, turn that thing. the Boulder County is really looking to figure out for the Boulder County, because Boulder County passed 110 by 60%, 57%. And so there's a desire and there's an understanding, I think, at Boulder County level that something needs to be done to fix transportation and get people around more, in different ways. So we're working at that regional level with our different groups to see what it takes to subtly remove RTD from some of this and become more of a player with, determining our own destiny, I guess, as far as transit. So these guys, I'm hearing this stuff, but and we don't know how far it's going to go. But that's just kind of, like I said, this is kind of shared with this group.
So, and why does it need to be settled?
Well, no one's ever exited RTD or any part of RTD.
Well, it's just subtle because it is one of these ideas that at the state level, all sorts of systems would have to change at the, statute level would have to change, because RTD really is, we voted in 1969 that RTD would control all the transit that was in, it took over all the different little bus systems that they had. Like Boulder had the Boulder Bus Company, and I'm not sure what Longmont had, but I think there were just these little bus systems all around the region, and so we voted in 1969. We didn't vote, I've been voting. But people voted so that they could basically centralize the whole system. And while that worked really great in the 70s and the 80s, it kind of started to fall apart in the 90s, 2000s. So here we are. We don't feel like we have any control over where our buses go. We feel like we keep telling people that we know where the growth is going to come, and they don't want to put any buses anywhere until they know there's households and there's jobs and all those things are there, and people will, and those same people will be surveyed and say they want to ride the bus.
Right. That's good to know. Well, thank you. City Council Liaison isn't here tonight. So we have other items for upcoming agendas that are listed. Next scheduled meeting is January 14th. Southwest Operations Study and the 2019 TAB work plan with our homework brought forward to Tyler. So with that, this is an early meeting for the last couple of months. We can adjourn if we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Okay, so Melanie makes a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Neil seconds. All those in favor of adjourning the December 2018 TAB meeting pretty early at 7:16, do so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimously approved. You're done. Thank you.
That was a hard sell.
Yeah, exactly. Or do you want to just stay around?
Happy holidays.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm trying to save my file before I lose it. That would not be good.
That's fine. A lot of people are like, it's spam.